The mansion's Christmas lights glittered like ice on a grave. Lena Carter's blood froze the moment the antique vase shattered across the marble floor, not from the cold, but from the look in Margaret Hollis's eyes. 3 years of invisible servitude erased in a heartbeat. No coat, no mercy. Just the blizzard's howl and a door slammed shut behind her. By the time Adrian Voss discovered what his house manager had done, Lena had 20 minutes left to live. This is a story about survival, power, and the dangerous line between protection and obsession. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stay until the end. You won't believe what happens next. The Voss estate sat like a crown of thorns on the hillside, all glass and stone and old money, its windows blazing gold against the December darkness. To anyone driving past on the winding road below, it looked like a palace. To Lena Carter, it had always felt more like a prison with excellent lighting. She'd learned early not to look at the beauty of it, the soaring ceilings, the art that cost more than most people made in a lifetime, the chandeliers that threw light like scattered diamonds. Beauty was a trap. Beauty made you forget your place, and Lena's place was in the spaces between, the invisible girl. The quiet hands that straightened what was crooked, cleaned what was dirty, existed only when needed and vanished the moment the work was done. 3 years she'd been here, and she could count on one hand the number of times Adrian Voss, the man who owned everything she touched, had actually looked at her. She preferred it that way. Being invisible was safer. But tonight, Christmas Eve, the mansion pulsed with a different energy. The staff moved like synchronized dancers through their routines, every surface polished to absurdity, every corner inspection ready. Margaret Hollis, the house manager, prowled the halls like a general before battle, her heels clicking sharp warnings against the marble. Lena kept her head down and moved faster. "The study," Margaret's voice cut through the kitchen's warm chaos. "Crystal needs replacing. The Waterford set, not the Baccarat. Mr. Voss returns tomorrow, and I will not have him find a single thing out of place." Lena nodded, already moving. She'd learned not to speak unless directly questioned. Words were dangerous around Margaret. They could be twisted, weaponized, used as evidence of insubordination. The study was Adrian Voss's private sanctuary, a room Lena had cleaned 100 times but never truly seen. She wasn't paid to see. She was paid to make things perfect and then disappear. The Waterford crystal sat in a locked cabinet, each piece worth more than 6 months of her salary. Lena's hands were steady as she removed the old glasses, replaced them with the new set. Muscle memory guided her movements. She'd done this before. She knew the weight, the balance, The door opened. Lena's heart jumped, but she didn't turn. Probably Margaret, checking her work with those cold, evaluating eyes. Well, not Margaret. James Crawford, one of Adrian's security team, leaned against the doorframe with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Working late, Lena." She kept her focus on the crystal, placing each piece with careful precision. "Just finishing up." Always so dedicated. He stepped into the room and Lena's shoulders tensed. James had a reputation, whispered about in the servants' quarters, never spoken aloud where it mattered. "You know, I've been here 5 years. You've been here 3. We've barely talked. I should get back to... I'm talking to you." His voice hardened just enough to make it a command, not a request. Lena's fingers trembled as she set down the last glass. She turned slowly, keeping her expression neutral, her body language closed. "I have other duties, Mr. Crawford." "James," he moved closer. "We're both staff here, right? No need for formalities." The space between them collapsed. Lena could smell cologne and coffee and something else, the particular scent of a man who knew he had power and enjoyed using it. "I really need to..." "The thing about you, Lena," James continued as if she hadn't spoken, "is you're too quiet, too invisible. Makes a man curious, makes him wonder what you're hiding under all that..." "Crawford," Margaret's voice cracked like a whip from the doorway. "I believe the south entrance cameras need your attention, immediately." James's jaw tightened, but he stepped back, his smile returning. "Of course, Ms. Hollis." He glanced at Lena one more time, something dark moving behind his eyes. "We'll continue this conversation later." The moment he left, the air changed. Lena knew better than to feel relieved. Margaret's interventions always came with a price. Thank you, Ms. Hollis. Save it. Margaret's gaze swept the study, cataloging every detail with mechanical precision. Did he touch you? No, ma'am. Good. Because if you're going to whore yourself to the security staff, do it on your own time, not mine. The words hit like a slap. Lena's face burned, but she kept her voice level. That's not what... I don't care what it was. Margaret moved to the cabinet, inspecting Lena's work with the intensity of a jeweler examining diamonds. I care that you were in here alone with a male staff member, Dr. Open, creating the appearance of impropriety. In this house, appearance is everything. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Do you? Margaret picked up one of the crystal glasses, held it to the light. Because from where I stand, you understand very little. You've been here 3 years, and you still move through this house like you own something, like you matter. Lena's fingernails cut crescents into her palms. She said nothing. You are replaceable, Lena. Completely and utterly replaceable. There are 100 girls who would kill for your position, girls who would be grateful, who would know their place and keep their heads down, and never, ever. The glass slipped. It happened so fast. One moment Margaret held it, the next it was falling, and Lena's instinct, the stupid, fatal instinct to help, made her lunge forward to catch it. Her elbow hit the cabinet. The sound was almost musical, a cascade of breaking crystal, each piece finding the marble floor with its own distinct note. The Waterford set, 12 glasses worth $700 each, exploded into a constellation of glittering shards. Time stopped. Lena stared at the destruction, her mind going blank with horror. $8,400. Gone. Destroyed. Her fault. Margaret's face had gone white, then red, then a color Lena had no name for. You... The word came out strangled. You clumsy, stupid, worthless... I'm sorry. Lena dropped to her knees, her hands shaking as she reached for the broken pieces. I'm so sorry. I'll pay for it. I'll... Pay for it? Margaret's laugh was sharp enough to draw blood. With what? Your pathetic salary? It would take you 2 years to pay for this, and that's assuming you ate nothing, paid for nothing, existed on air and good intentions. Please, Ms. Hollis, I didn't mean to... Get up! Margaret's voice had gone cold, dangerously cold. Get up and get out of my sight. Lena stood on shaking legs, crystal dust glittering on her uniform. I can clean this up. I can... You've done enough. Margaret pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. Go to your room. Pack your things. You're done. The world tilted. Ms. Hollis, please. Done. Finished. Terminated. However you need me to say it. Margaret didn't even look at her. You have 30 minutes to gather your belongings and get off this property. Any longer and I'll have security escort you out. But it's Christmas Eve. The blizzard... Now Margaret looked at her, and Lena saw something she'd never seen before in those cold eyes. Satisfaction. Should have thought of that before you destroyed $8,000 worth of Mr. Voss's property. 30 minutes, Lena. Starting now. The walk to her room was a blur. Lena's quarters were on the 3rd floor, in the servants' wing, a small space with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the estate's rear gardens. It had been home for 3 years. Not a good home, not a kind home, but shelter, safety, a place to exist. Now it was a cell with a countdown. Her hand shook as she pulled her battered suitcase from under the bed. Clothes, a few books, the photograph of her mother, dead 6 years now. Everything she owned in the world fit in one bag. The realization made something crack in her chest. 23 years old, and this was all she had. No family, no savings. Every dollar went to the debt collectors who'd inherited her mother's medical bills. No references. Margaret would make sure of that. No future beyond the next few hours of survival. The window showed her the truth she'd been trying to ignore. The blizzard had gotten worse. Snow fell in thick, angry sheets, driven by winds that rattled the glass. The temperature had dropped to 12 degrees. The nearest town was 8 miles down a mountain road. Lena pulled out her phone. Dead. She'd forgotten to charge it. 18 minutes left. She dressed in layers, her thickest sweater over her uniform, her only jacket over that. It was a spring jacket, thin denim, completely inadequate for the weather outside. But it was all she had. At the 15-minute mark, she heard footsteps in the hall. James Crawford filled her doorway, his expression unreadable. Heard you're leaving. Yes. Lena zipped her suitcase, not looking at him. Shame. I was starting to like having you around. He stepped into the room and Lena's skin crawled. Where you headed? I'll figure it out. In a blizzard? At night? He moved closer. That's dangerous, Lena. Real dangerous. You know what? I've got a better idea. I have friends in town. They're always looking for girls who need work. I could make a call, set you up with something. All you'd have to do is... No. Lena grabbed her suitcase and moved toward the door. Thank you, but no. His hand caught her arm. I'm trying to help you. Let go. You're not in a position to... Let go. Something in her voice made him release her. Lena didn't run. Running would show fear, but she walked fast, her suitcase banging against her leg as she headed for the stairs. Margaret waited at the bottom, her face carved from ice. 12 minutes. You're cutting it close. I'm leaving now. Good. Margaret opened the front door, and the wind howled in like a living thing, bringing snow and cold that stole Lena's breath. Oh, and Lena, don't bother using me as a reference. Anyone calls, I'll tell them exactly what you are. Clumsy, careless, a thief who destroyed valuable property. I'm not a thief. You cost Mr. Voss $8,000. What else would you call it? Margaret's smile was sharp as broken glass. Now get out, before I change my mind about calling the police. The cold hit Lena like a wall. She stepped onto the front steps, her thin jacket already useless against the wind. Behind her, the door slammed shut. She heard the lock click. The driveway stretched before her, disappearing into white darkness. 8 miles to town, in 12-degree weather. In a blizzard, with no phone, no money, nothing but a suitcase and a jacket that might as well have been made of paper. Lena started walking. The first 10 minutes weren't so bad. Cold, yes, painful, but manageable. She kept her head down, her suitcase in front of her like a shield against the wind, one foot in front of the other. That's all survival was. Movement, forward motion, refusing to stop. By minute 20, her hands had gone numb. By 30, she couldn't feel her feet. At 45, she fell for the first time. The suitcase went flying, spilling her life into the snow. Lena scrambled after her belongings, her fingers like frozen clubs, barely able to grip. The photograph of her mother skittered away on the wind. She lunged for it, caught it, pressed it against her chest. I'm sorry, she whispered, to her mother, to herself, to whatever God might be listening to a girl dying on a mountain road. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. She tried to stand. Fell again. This time, getting up was harder. The cold had moved past pain into something else, a heaviness, a seductive warmth that whispered lies about rest, about sleep, about how easy it would be to just close her eyes for a moment. Lena knew what that warmth meant. Hypothermia, the body's final kindness before death. No. She forced herself to her knees, then her feet. No, move, keep moving. But her legs wouldn't obey. She managed 3 more steps before collapsing into a snowdrift. This time, she couldn't get up. The snow felt soft, almost comfortable. Lena's eyes drifted closed. She thought about her mother, about the tiny apartment where they'd been happy before the cancer came, about summer days and warm kitchens and the feeling of being loved. She thought about the mansion, glittering on the hill above her. She thought about how nobody would know she died here until spring thaw. The darkness closed in, gentle as a blanket. Lena Carter, 23 years old, invisible in life and invisible in death, let the cold take her. She never heard the car. Adrian Voss had built an empire on 2 principles: perfect information and decisive action. He'd learned early that the world belonged to those who saw clearly and struck first, who understood that sentiment was a luxury and mercy, a weakness. He'd broken men who forgot those lessons, companies, entire market sectors. But standing in the mansion's grand foyer at 11 p.m. on Christmas Eve, looking at the destruction in his study, Adrian felt something he rarely allowed himself: doubt. Explain this again, he said quietly. Margaret Hollis stood at attention, her spine rigid, her expression carefully neutral. A maid named Lena Carter destroyed the Waterford crystal set while cleaning. $8,400 in damages. I terminated her employment and removed her from the property. When? Approximately 2 hours ago, sir. Adrian moved to the study window. Outside, the blizzard raged, a full whiteout, the kind of storm that killed. You sent her out in that? She broke expensive property, Mr. Voss. I followed protocol for... Protocol. Adrian turned, and Margaret actually flinched. Tell me, Ms. Hollis, does protocol account for manslaughter charges when they find her frozen corpse tomorrow morning? Sir, Where was she going? I don't know. Town, presumably. 8 miles in 12-degree weather, in a blizzard. Adrian's voice remained level, almost conversational. It was the tone his competitors feared most. Did you verify she had transportation? That's not my... Did you verify she had appropriate clothing? Margaret's silence was answer enough. Adrian pulled out his phone, dialed security. Crawford, get the footage from the front entrance for the past 3 hours. Send it to my tablet, now. He ended the call and looked at Margaret. Really looked at her, seeing past the efficient exterior to the rot beneath. How long has Lena Carter worked here? 3 years, sir. And in those 3 years, how many complaints were filed against her? None, but how many incidents of theft, destruction, or negligence? This is the first, however. So a model employee with 3 years of perfect service has 1 accident on Christmas Eve, and your response is to throw her into a blizzard? Adrian's tablet chimed. He looked down at the screen, saw the security footage load. Let's see what really happened, shall we? The video played in silence. Adrian watched Lena enter the study, her movements careful and practiced. He watched James Crawford follow her in, watched the conversation turn predatory. He watched Margaret interrupt, watched the confrontation afterward. Then came the critical moment. Margaret held the glass. Margaret's hand loosened. The glass fell. Lena tried to catch it. Her elbow hit the cabinet. Adrian replayed it 3 times, his expression never changing. Sir, Margaret started, you have to understand. I understand perfectly. Adrian set down the tablet. You dropped the glass. Lena tried to catch it. The collision destroyed the set. Then you blamed her, fired her, and sent her to die rather than admit your mistake. That's not... I would never. The footage doesn't lie, Ms. Hollis. You do. Adrian moved toward the door, already pulling on his coat. Consider yourself terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you off the property within the hour. You'll receive 2 weeks severance and nothing else. Attempt to use me as a reference, and I'll have my lawyers explain liability law to you in excruciating detail. Margaret's face crumbled. Mr. Voss, please, I've worked here for 10 years, and in those 10 years, how many others have you done this to? Adrian buttoned his coat, his movements sharp with controlled fury. How many invisible servants have you abused, blamed, discarded? Did you think I didn't notice the turnover rate? The fear in their eyes when you walk past? I was maintaining discipline, maintaining standards. You were maintaining a petty kingdom where you played God with people's lives. Adrian grabbed his keys. Pack your things. If you're still here when I get back, I'll have you arrested for criminal endangerment. He was out the door before she could respond. The blizzard hit him like a physical force. Adrian's Range Rover barely made it down the driveway, the 4-wheel drive struggling against ice and snow. Visibility was maybe 10 feet. The temperature readout on the dash showed 8 degrees and dropping. 2 hours in this weather. Lena had a 30-minute head start before the worst hit, maybe made it a mile before conditions became unsurvivable. If she'd stayed on the road, if she hadn't fallen, if she was still alive, Adrian pushed the thought away. Emotions were noise. Action was clarity. He drove slowly, methodically, his high beams cutting pale tunnels through the white chaos. 1 mile. 2. Nothing but empty road and endless snow. At mile 3 he saw it. A shape, dark against white, too still to be living. Adrian slammed the brakes, threw the car into park, and ran. Lena lay curled in a snowdrift, her suitcase nearby, her thin jacket crusted with ice. Her lips were blue. Her skin was gray. She wasn't moving. Adrian dropped to his knees, his hand going to her neck. For a terrible moment, he felt nothing. Then, there. A pulse. Faint. Too slow. But there. Lena. He shook her gently. No response. Lena, can you hear me? Nothing. Adrian didn't hesitate. He scooped her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, all bones and frozen fabric, and ran back to the Range Rover. He cranked the heat to maximum, positioned her in the passenger seat, and grabbed the emergency blanket from the cargo area. As he wrapped her, he saw her hand clutch something. A photograph. A woman who might have been Lena's mother, smiling in summer sunshine. Something in Adrian's chest twisted. He drove back faster than was safe, the Range Rover fishtailing on ice, his hand on Lena's shoulder to keep her upright. She'd started shivering, violent, whole-body tremors that shook the seat. Good. Shivering meant her body was still fighting. The mansion's lights appeared through the storm like a beacon. Adrian pulled up to the front entrance, killed the engine, and carried Lena inside. The staff had gathered, drawn by the commotion, by Margaret's very public firing, by the unprecedented sight of Adrian Voss himself carrying an unconscious maid through the front doors. Someone call Dr. Morrison, Adrian ordered. Tell him hypothermia, possible frostbite. Get him here now. The rest of you, I want hot water bottles, warm blankets, and tea. Move. They scattered like startled birds. Adrian carried Lena to his personal quarters, the master suite on the second floor, a space no staff member had ever entered. He laid her on his bed and began carefully removing her frozen clothing, his movements clinical, focused. The jacket was useless. The sweater beneath was barely better. Her uniform was soaked through. Her shoes were canvas sneakers, completely inappropriate for winter. Margaret had sent her to die in canvas sneakers. Adrian's hands shook as he wrapped Lena in warm blankets. Not from cold, from rage. Dr. Morrison arrived 20 minutes later, a gray-haired man who'd served the Voss family for 30 years and knew better than to ask questions. He examined Lena with practiced efficiency while Adrian watched from the doorway. Core temperature is 89 degrees, Morrison said finally. Moderate hypothermia. Frostbite on her fingers and toes, but I think we caught it in time. She needs slow rewarming, monitoring for cardiac arrhythmia, and about 48 hours of complete rest. He looked at Adrian. She's lucky you found her. Another 30 minutes, and we'd be having a very different conversation. Will she be all right? Barring complications, yes, but Adrian... Morrison packed his equipment with careful precision. This girl was sent out in that storm with no protection. Someone tried to kill her, you know that, right? I know. Are you going to do something about it? Adrian looked at Lena, small and still in his enormous bed, her dark hair spread across his pillow like spilled ink. I already have. Morrison left. Adrian stayed. He should have delegated this. Should have had the housekeeper monitor her. Should have returned to the study and the 100 other things that demanded his attention. Instead, he sat in his chair by the bed and watched Lena breathe. She was nothing like the women in his world. No polish. No calculation. Just a girl who'd tried to catch a falling glass and paid for it with everything she had. A girl no one had noticed. No one had protected. No one had cared enough to save until it was almost too late. Adrian thought about the footage, about Margaret's face, about James Crawford's predatory smile and the fear in Lena's eyes, about the systematic cruelty that had thrived in his house while he was too busy building his empire to see it. I'm sorry, he said quietly, though she couldn't hear him. This shouldn't have happened to you, any of it. Lena's hand twitched under the blankets. Her lips moved, forming soundless words. Adrian leaned closer. Lena, can you hear me? Her eyes opened, dark brown, glazed with confusion and fear. She tried to sit up, failed, fell back against the pillows with a small sound of pain. Easy, Adrian said. You're safe. You're in my quarters. The doctor's been here. You're going to be fine. She blinked at him, trying to focus. Mr. Voss? Yes. I'm sorry. Her voice was barely a whisper. About the crystal. I'll pay for it. I just need time. I can... Stop. Adrian's voice came out harder than he intended. He softened it. The crystal doesn't matter. You almost died, Lena. Do you understand that? You were minutes away from freezing to death on the side of the road. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I didn't have anywhere else to go. The words hit Adrian like a fist to the chest. I know. I'm sorry. This never should have happened. Ms. Hollis said, Ms. Hollis no longer works here. She's been terminated. Lena's eyes widened. Because of me? Because she tried to cover up her own mistake by throwing you into a blizzard. Adrian stood, needing distance, needing to think. I saw the footage, Lena. She dropped the glass, not you. But I tried to catch it. I know. He turned back to her. When you're recovered, we'll discuss your employment here. But right now, you need to rest. Doctor's orders. I don't understand. Lena struggled to sit up again, her face pale with exhaustion and confusion. Why are you helping me? I'm just a maid. I'm nobody. Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and saw what he'd been too blind to see before. Not nobody, not invisible, just unseen. You're somebody who nearly died because I didn't pay attention to what was happening in my own house, he said quietly. That ends now. Lena's eyes drifted closed, exhaustion dragging her back under. Adrian watched until her breathing evened out, until he was sure she was truly asleep. Then he left the room and made a phone call. Harrison? It's Adrian. I need a full staff audit, complete background checks, interviews, everything. And I want James Crawford's file on my desk by morning. Someone's been running a protection racket in my house, and I want to know how deep it goes. He hung up and stared out the window at the storm. The mansion had always been a fortress, but fortresses kept things in as well as out. And somewhere in his perfect controlled empire, rot had taken hold. Adrian Voss had built his fortune on perfect information and decisive action. It was time to burn out the infection. Starting tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, he stood guard over a girl who'd survived a winter that should have killed her, and wondered when he'd become the kind of man who could miss something so obvious, so cruel, happening right under his nose. The blizzard raged outside. Inside, Lena Carter slept in a bed worth more than she'd ever owned, wrapped in blankets that cost more than her yearly salary, saved by a man who'd finally learned to see the invisible. Christmas morning would bring reckonings. But for now, in the quiet hours between midnight and dawn, the mansion held its breath and waited for the storm to pass. Lena woke to unfamiliar softness. For a moment, she floated in the space between sleep and consciousness, aware only of warmth and the absence of pain. Then memory crashed back. The blizzard, the cold, the certainty of dying alone on a frozen road. Her eyes snapped open. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a room that belonged in magazines, not real life. Vaulted ceilings, cream-colored walls hung with art she couldn't name, a fireplace large enough to stand in, and the bed. This impossible bed, with its Egyptian cotton sheets and down comforter that felt like sleeping on a cloud. This wasn't the servants' quarters. Lena sat up too quickly, her head spinning. Her body ached in strange places, a deep bone tiredness that spoke of trauma barely survived. She looked down at herself and felt heat flood her face. Someone had changed her clothes. She wore silk pajamas that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe, her frozen uniform nowhere in sight. The door opened and Lena's heart jumped. But it wasn't Adrian Voss. A woman in her 50s entered carrying a tray, her expression kind in a way Lena had almost forgotten existed. "Oh, good, you're awake," the woman said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. I've been monitoring you through the night. How are you feeling?" Lena's voice came out rough, confused. "That's understandable." Dr. Chen pulled up a chair, her movements efficient but gentle. "You suffered moderate hypothermia and frostbite. Mr. Voss found you on the road and brought you back. You've been asleep for about 14 hours. 14 hours? Christmas Day, then." Lena looked at her hands. They were bandaged, the fingers stiff and sore. "The frostbite, is it? You'll keep all your fingers and toes, if that's what you're asking, though they're going to hurt like hell for a while." Dr. Chen smiled. "You're incredibly lucky. Another 30 minutes and we'd be having a very different conversation." Lucky. The word felt foreign. Lena had never considered herself lucky, not since her mother died and the medical debt collectors started calling, not since she'd ended up invisible and expendable in a mansion full of people who never saw her. "I need to go," Lena said, pushing back the covers. "I shouldn't be here. Mr. Voss wants to see you when you're ready." Dr. Chen's hand on her shoulder was firm. "But you're not ready. You need rest, fluids, and time for your body to recover. So you're going to eat this breakfast, take your medication, and stay in this bed until I say otherwise. Understood? It wasn't really a question. Lena sank back against the pillows, her brief surge of energy already fading. Dr. Chen lifted the tray's silver dome, revealing scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit, and tea. The smell made Lena's stomach growl traitorously. Eat slowly. Your system's been through a shock. Lena picked up the fork with bandaged hands, the movement awkward. Why is he helping me? You'd have to ask him that. Dr. Chen checked the monitors beside the bed. When had those appeared? And made notes on a tablet. But if I had to guess, Adrian Voss doesn't like being lied to, and someone in his house lied to him about you. The eggs tasted like heaven. Lena forced herself to eat slowly, though her body screamed for more, faster. Margaret told him what happened? Margaret was fired and escorted off the property last night. Dr. Chen's tone remained professional, but Lena caught the edge of satisfaction beneath it. Along with James Crawford and 2 other security personnel, Mr. Voss has been quite thorough. The fork slipped from Lena's fingers. He fired them because of me. He fired them because they created a hostile work environment, engaged in harassment, and in Margaret's case, attempted to cover up negligence with potential manslaughter. Dr. Chen retrieved the fork, placed it back in Lena's hand. You were the catalyst, but the rot ran deeper than one incident. Lena's mind reeled. Margaret Hollis had been at the estate for a decade. James Crawford, almost as long. They were fixtures, permanence itself. And now they were gone. Because of her. Because Adrian Voss had actually looked at the security footage. Because someone had finally seen her. I don't understand, Lena whispered. I'm nobody. Why would he care? Dr. Chen studied her for a long moment. Honey, in my experience, Adrian Voss doesn't do anything without a reason. But whatever that reason is, you're safe here. For now, that's all that matters. She left Lena to finish breakfast alone. The food sat heavy in her stomach, warring with the anxiety that twisted her insides. Safe. The word felt like a trap. Safety was temporary. Safety could be revoked. Lena had learned that lesson the hard way. She was reaching for the tea when the door opened again. Adrian Voss stood in the doorway, and Lena's breath caught. She'd seen him before, of course, glimpses in hallways, his back disappearing into rooms, the distant figure who owned everything she touched. But she'd never been this close. Never had his full attention directed at her like a spotlight she couldn't escape. He was younger than she'd thought. 32, maybe 33, with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it and eyes the color of winter ice. He wore a black sweater and dark jeans, casual in a way that probably cost more than most people's rent. Everything about him screamed control, precision, power held in check by will alone. Ms. Carter. His voice was exactly as she remembered from last night, quiet, measured, dangerous. How are you feeling? Better? Thank you. Lena set down the teacup, acutely aware of the silk pajamas, the massive bed, the fact that she was in his private quarters. Dr. Chen said that you found me. I did. Adrian moved into the room but kept his distance, as if aware that proximity might spook her. I'm sorry it took so long. If I'd been here when it happened. You didn't know. The words came out too fast. You couldn't have known. I should have. He moved to the window, his profile sharp against the winter sunlight. This is my house. My responsibility. The fact that I was blind to what was happening under my own roof is inexcusable. Lena didn't know what to say to that. In her world, owners didn't apologize. Bosses didn't take responsibility. The powerful did what they wanted, and people like her learned to survive in the spaces between. I've reviewed the security footage extensively, Adrian continued. All of it. Not just the study, but the past 6 months of recordings from every camera in this house. He turned to face her. What I saw was systematic abuse. Margaret Hollis created a culture of fear. James Crawford and his team exploited it. And I was too absent, too focused on business to notice. That's not your fault, Lena said quietly. Isn't it? His laugh was bitter. I hired them. I trusted them. I gave them authority and never bothered to check if they deserved it. He paused. The footage shows Crawford cornering you on at least 7 occasions over the past 3 months. Did he ever touch you? Lena's face burned. No, he talked, made suggestions, nothing I couldn't handle. You shouldn't have had to handle it at all. Adrian's voice had gone cold again, that terrifying quietness that meant violence held in check. He's gone. They're all gone. And I've instructed Harrison, my head of security, to conduct interviews with every staff member. Anyone who was complicit in creating that environment will be removed. You're going to fire more people because of what happened to me? Lena's voice cracked. Mr. Voss, I appreciate what you did, finding me, but you don't need to. I'm not doing this because of what happened to you. Adrian crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping at the foot of the bed. I'm doing this because it should never have happened in the first place. Because I built an empire on perfect information and somehow missed a protection racket operating in my own home. Because he stopped, running a hand through his hair. Because you almost died, and it would have been my fault. The raw honesty in his voice stole Lena's breath. She'd spent 3 years invisible, and now the most powerful man she'd ever met was standing in front of her, taking responsibility for her near death, like it was a personal failure. What happens now? She asked. That depends on you. Adrian's expression was unreadable. You have options. I can arrange transportation to anywhere you want to go, along with a substantial settlement to compensate for your treatment here. Or, he paused. You can stay. Not as a maid. That position is gone. But I'm restructuring the household staff entirely. I need people I can trust. People who aren't afraid to tell me the truth. You've been here 3 years. You know how this house operates. I'd like to offer you a position as assistant to the new house manager. Lena stared at him. You want to promote me? I want to employ someone who gives a damn about doing the job right instead of protecting their petty kingdom. Adrian's tone was matter-of-fact. The salary would be triple what you were making. Full benefits. Your own apartment in the renovated East Wing, not the servants' quarters. And a contract that explicitly protects you from retaliation or termination without cause. Triple her salary, benefits, protection. It was too much, too generous, too suspicious. Why? Lena asked. You don't know me. I could be terrible at management. I know you tried to catch a falling glass to prevent waste, even though it wasn't your fault. I know you kept your head down and did your job for 3 years without a single complaint. I know you survived a blizzard that should have killed you through sheer will. Adrian's ice-blue eyes held hers. And I know you're asking why, instead of just taking what's offered, which tells me you have integrity. That's worth more than experience. Lena's throat tightened. She wanted to say yes, wanted it desperately. But fear held her back. Fear that this was temporary, that she'd wake up and find it all a dream, that accepting would mean owing something she couldn't pay. I need time to think, she said finally. Take all the time you need. Adrian moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Ms. Carter? Your mother's photograph. It was in the snow. I had it restored and framed. It's on the dresser. He left before she could respond. Lena waited until the door closed, then struggled out of bed on shaking legs. Her body protested every movement, but she made it to the dresser. There, in a simple silver frame, was her mother's photograph. Cleaned, preserved, protected. She picked it up with bandaged hands and let herself cry. The next 3 days passed in a blur of recovery and revelation. Dr. Chen kept Lena in bed the first day, monitoring vitals and changing bandages. By the second day, Lena was allowed to walk around the suite, her stiff limbs gradually remembering how to move without pain. And every evening, Adrian came to check on her. The visits were brief, professional. He'd ask about her recovery, share updates on the staff restructuring, discuss plans for the household's new management structure. But there was something else beneath the business talk, a current Lena couldn't quite name. The way his eyes lingered on her bandaged hands. The careful distance he maintained, as if afraid getting too close might damage something fragile. The way he listened when she spoke like her words actually mattered. On the 4th day, Dr. Chen declared her well enough to leave the suite. Your hands and feet are healing nicely. The numbness should fade over the next few weeks. Just take it easy, avoid extreme temperatures, and for heaven's sake, get proper winter clothes before you go anywhere. Lena stood in front of the mirror, wearing clothes that had appeared in the suite's closet, jeans that actually fit, a soft sweater, Real boots. Not the uniform, not the invisible girl costume she'd worn for 3 years. She looked like someone who mattered. The thought terrified her. "Miss Carter?" A knock at the door. A young woman in professional attire smiled at her. "I'm Rachel Kim, Mr. Voss's executive assistant. He'd like to see you in his office when you're ready." Lena's stomach dropped. "Is something wrong?" "Not at all. He just wants to discuss your employment options." Rachel's smile was genuine. "Take your time. I'll wait and show you the way." The walk through the mansion felt surreal. Lena had cleaned these halls 100 times, but she'd never really seen them. The art, the architecture, the sheer wealth on display. And the staff they passed actually looked at her, nodded, said hello. One older woman even smiled and said, "Good to see you up and around." Recognition, visibility. It made Lena's skin itch with discomfort. Adrian's office was on the main floor, a room Lena had never entered. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 2 walls, a massive desk dominated the center, and windows overlooked the snow-covered grounds. Adrian stood at those windows, his back to the door, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care about the optics, Harrison. I care about results." His voice was sharp. "Run the backgrounds again. Anyone who's been here more than 5 years gets extra scrutiny. I want to know everything. Finances, associations, complaints that were buried, everything." A pause. "Good. Report back tonight." He ended the call and turned. Saw Lena. His expression softened imperceptibly. "Miss Carter, please, sit." He gestured to the chairs facing his desk. Lena sat, her hands clasped tight in her lap. Adrian took the chair beside her, not behind the desk, a gesture that put them on equal ground instead of employer and employee. "I've had 4 days to think," Lena said before he could speak, "about your offer. And I want to understand something first." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "You don't know me. I could be anyone. So why, really why, are you doing this?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "When I started my first company, I was 23. Broke, ambitious, hungry. I had one investor who took a chance on me when no one else would." He leaned back. His name was Marcus Webb. He told me, "Adrian, I'm not investing in your business plan. I'm investing in what you do when things go wrong, because things always go wrong." What happened to him? "He died 5 years ago. Heart attack." Adrian's jaw tightened. "But before he did, he told me something I've never forgotten. He said the measure of a man isn't how he treats his equals. It's how he treats the people who can't do anything for him." Lena's throat constricted. "I failed that test," Adrian continued, "spectacularly. I was so focused on building my empire that I didn't notice the people suffering to maintain it. You almost died because I didn't pay attention." He looked at her directly. "So, yes, I'm offering you this position because you're qualified. But I'm also offering it because I owe you, and because I want to build something better than what I had before." The honesty in his voice was devastating. Lena had spent 3 years watching powerful people lie as easily as breathing. Adrian's raw truth felt like standing too close to a fire. "I'll take the position," she said quietly. "But I want something in writing, a contract that protects both of us. Clear expectations. No surprises." Adrian smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face from ice to something almost warm. "I'd expect nothing less. I'll have legal draft something by tomorrow." He stood, extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Ms. Carter." Lena shook his hand, acutely aware of the bandages, the difference in their worlds. "You can call me Lena." "Lena." He said her name like he was testing its weight. "Then you should call me Adrian, at least when we're working together." The next 2 weeks transformed the mansion from the inside out. Adrian hired a new house manager, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Reeves, who'd managed hotels and had zero tolerance for abuse. Together, Lena and Patricia restructured the entire household staff, interviewing every employee, checking references, rebuilding systems that had been corrupted by Margaret's regime. It was exhausting, exhilarating, terrifying. Lena had never had power before. Now she held positions in her hands, could hire, fire, change lives with a word. The responsibility kept her up at night, but Adrian was always there, not hovering, not micromanaging, but present, available. He'd stop by the staff offices, ask questions, listen to concerns, and every evening he'd check in with Lena personally. "How'd it go today?" he asked one night, finding her in the small office she'd claimed as her own. "We let go of 3 more people." Lena rubbed her tired eyes. 2 were actively participating in Crawford's schemes. The 3rd was just complicit, looked the other way. "How do you feel about that?" Lena considered. "Like I'm destroying lives. Like I'm doing the right thing, both at once." "That's the job." Adrian leaned against her desk. "Second-guessing yourself means you care. The moment you stop feeling that weight is the moment you've become what we're trying to fix." She looked up at him. "Does it ever get easier?" "No, but you get stronger." Their eyes held for a moment too long. Something electric moved in the space between them, something that made Lena's breath catch and her pulse quicken. Then Adrian straightened, breaking the moment. "I should let you finish up. Just wanted to check in." He was almost to the door when Lena spoke. "Adrian?" He turned. "Thank you for trusting me with this." His smile was soft, almost sad. "Thank you for saying yes." After he left, Lena sat in the quiet office and tried to name the feeling in her chest. Not gratitude, not fear, something else, something dangerous. But she pushed it away and returned to work. January brought bitter cold in the final pieces of household restructuring. The staff that remained were vetted, loyal, and actually seemed happy to be there. Patricia ran the household with efficient kindness. The mansion felt different, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. Lena settled into her new role, her new apartment in the East Wing, her new life. She had money now, benefits, respect, everything she'd never dared to dream of. But she was acutely aware of Adrian's presence in a way that felt increasingly dangerous. The way he looked at her during meetings, like she was the only person in the room. The way he remembered small things, how she took her coffee, that she hated the cold, that the anniversary of her mother's death was approaching. The way his hand would brush hers when passing documents, sending electricity up her arm. And the way she caught herself watching him, the line of his jaw, the rare smiles, the intensity in his eyes when he was focused on solving a problem. This was dangerous. He was her employer, her savior, the man who'd literally carried her out of a blizzard. Getting attached would be stupid, reckless, a guaranteed way to destroy everything she'd built. But telling herself that didn't make the feeling stop. It was Patricia who finally called her out. "You know you're staring at him, right?" Patricia said one afternoon, watching Lena watch Adrian through the office window. Lena jerked her gaze away. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Honey, I've been managing people for 20 years. I know what attraction looks like." Patricia's tone was kind but firm. "And I know it's complicated as hell when your boss is the one you're attracted to." "Nothing's going to happen," Lena said quickly. "Even if I wanted it to, which I'm not saying I do, it would be inappropriate. He's Adrian Voss. I'm me." "You're a smart, capable woman who's earned her place here." Patricia crossed her arms. "But you're right about one thing. It would be complicated. Adrian's not the kind of man who does casual, and you're not the kind of woman who could handle being another rich man's distraction." The words stung because they were true. Lena had no illusions about where she fit in Adrian's world. He'd saved her because it was the right thing to do, promoted her because she was competent. But anything beyond that? That was fantasy. "I'll handle it," Lena said. "I know you will." Patricia squeezed her shoulder. "Just be careful, both of you." The warning came too late. That night, Adrian found Lena in the library, curled up in a window seat with a book she wasn't really reading. January 28th, the anniversary of her mother's death. 6 years, and it still felt like yesterday. "Lena?" Adrian's voice was soft. "Are you all right?" She looked up, saw genuine concern in his eyes, and something inside her cracked. "It's the anniversary of when she died." Adrian didn't offer empty platitudes. He just sat down across from her, his presence solid and grounding. "Tell me about her." So Lena did. She talked about summer mornings and bad cooking and the way her mother laughed. About the cancer that came fast and vicious. About being 17 and alone and drowning in medical debt that would take decades to pay off. About how she'd felt invisible ever since. Adrian listened without interrupting, his full attention on her in that intense way of his. When she finally ran out of words, he spoke quietly. "You're not invisible anymore." "I know, because of you." "No." He leaned forward. "Because you survived. Because you're strong enough to take what life throws at you and keep going. I just gave you an opportunity. You're the one who made something of it." The space between them felt charged. Dangerous. Lena knew she should leave, should put distance between them before she did something stupid. Instead, she asked the question she'd been holding back for weeks. "Why do you really care, Adrian? About me specifically?" His eyes held hers. "You want the truth?" "Always. Because when I found you in that snow, barely alive, I realized I'd been sleepwalking through my own life, building empires and missing everything that mattered." He paused. "You reminded me what it means to fight for survival, to care about something beyond profit margins and power plays." "That's not an answer." "No?" His smile was wry. "Then try this. You're brilliant, brave, and you see through my bullshit in a way no one else does. You challenge me. You make me want to be better than I am." He stood abruptly, as if the confession had cost him. "And that terrifies me." He left before Lena could respond. She sat in the quiet library, her heart racing, and knew with absolute certainty that everything was about to change. She just didn't know how dangerous that change would become. Outside, winter tightened its grip, and in the shadows beyond the estate's walls, enemies were gathering, drawn by rumors of Adrian's household purge, by the weakness they thought they'd found. They were wrong about the weakness, but they were right that something had changed, and that change would cost more than either Adrian or Lena could imagine. The tension between them became a living thing after that night in the library, coiling through the mansion's halls like smoke. Lena felt it every time Adrian entered a room, the way the air changed, grew heavier, charged with electricity that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the words he'd left hanging between them. She threw herself into work with desperate focus. February brought budget reviews, staff evaluations, and the complex dance of managing a household that ran on precision and discretion. Patricia noticed, of course, but said nothing, just watched Lena with knowing eyes and occasionally squeezed her shoulder in passing. Adrian, for his part, maintained professional distance. Their interactions were cordial, efficient, carefully controlled. But Lena caught him watching her sometimes, across the dining room during staff meetings, through the window when she worked late, in those unguarded moments before he remembered to look away. It was driving her insane. "You're going to wear a hole in that carpet," Patricia observed one evening, finding Lena pacing her office like a caged animal. "I'm fine." "You're wound tighter than a spring." Patricia closed the door behind her. "What happened?" "Nothing happened. That's the problem." Lena stopped pacing, ran her hands through her hair. "He said all these things, Patricia, about how I challenge him, how I make him want to be better. And then he just... nothing. Radio silence, professional courtesy, like that conversation never happened." "Maybe he's giving you space. Maybe he regrets saying anything at all." Lena sank into her chair. "Maybe I read too much into it. Maybe, or maybe," Patricia interrupted gently, "he's trying to do the right thing. You work for him, Lena. Anything that happens between you two comes with complications, power dynamics, questions about consent. He's probably terrified of making you uncomfortable." "Well, he's doing a great job of that by pretending nothing happened." Patricia laughed. "Talk to him. Clear the air. This tension is going to eat both of you alive." But before Lena could decide whether that was terrible or brilliant advice, Harrison burst into the office without knocking. Adrian's head of security was former military, all hard edges and controlled aggression. Lena had never seen him look rattled. He looked rattled now. "Where's Adrian?" he demanded. "Conference call with Tokyo. Should be done in... Get him. Now." Harrison's jaw was tight. "We have a problem." The conference room felt like a war room. Harrison had spread photographs across the table, surveillance shots, grainy and distant, but clear enough to make Lena's blood run cold. "That's Margaret Hollis," she said, pointing to a woman climbing out of a black sedan. "And that's Vincent Caruso." Harrison tapped another photo. "Crime boss. Runs most of the illegal operations in the Eastern Corridor, drugs, weapons, trafficking. He's been trying to get leverage on Adrian for years. Adrian stood at the head of the table, his expression carved from ice. When were these taken? 3 days ago. Our informant says Margaret approached Caruso 2 weeks after being fired, offered him information about the estate's security systems, staff schedules, vulnerabilities. Harrison pulled up another image. This is James Crawford meeting with 2 of Caruso's lieutenants yesterday. They're planning something, Patricia said quietly. They're planning revenge. Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. The tone Lena had learned meant he was furious. Margaret lost her kingdom. Crawford lost his income stream. They want payback. Harrison nodded. My contacts say Caruso's interested because you've been disrupting his supply chains. 3 of his shell companies folded last quarter because of your real estate acquisitions. He sees this as an opportunity to hurt you financially and personally. What's the target? Adrian's eyes met Lena's across the table, and her stomach dropped. We don't know yet, but Margaret knows the new security protocols. She knows the staff rotations, the blind spots. Harrison's expression was grim, and she knows about Ms. Carter's promotion, about the special attention you've been paying to restructuring. She thinks I'm a weakness, Lena said, understanding flooding through her. She thinks they can get to you through me. You're not a weakness. Adrian's voice was sharp, but they'll try to use you as leverage regardless. Harrison, what are our options? Lockdown, full security detail on the estate. No one in or out without clearance. Harrison pulled up a tablet, began typing. I've already contacted the additional teams. They can be here within the hour. Do it. Adrian turned to Patricia. All non-essential staff get sent home with pay until this is resolved. Anyone who stays is here voluntarily and gets hazard compensation. Adrian, that's non-negotiable. His tone left no room for argument. I won't risk people who didn't sign up for this. Lena's mind raced. What about local law enforcement? If Caruso's planning something, we have contacts in the police department, but Caruso owns half of them. Harrison's smile was bitter. Filing a report would just give him advance warning. Better to handle this internally. Internally? Lena stood, her chair scraping back. You're talking about a private war. People could die. People will definitely die if we do nothing. Adrian's eyes were cold, calculating. Caruso doesn't make threats. He makes examples, and Margaret just handed him the blueprint to my home. The weight of it crashed over Lena. This was her fault. If she'd never broken that vase, never been fired, never been saved, none of this would be happening. Margaret would still be here, cruel but contained. Crawford would still be running his schemes. Adrian would be safe. I should leave, she said quietly. If I'm the target, if they're using me as leverage, no. Why? Adrian crossed to her in 3 strides, his presence overwhelming. You're not going anywhere. Adrian, if I stay, I'm putting everyone at risk. You think leaving would make you safer? His voice was low, intense. The moment you walk out that door, you're exposed, vulnerable. They'd grab you in hours, and then they'd have real leverage. At least here you're protected. By what? High walls and security cameras? Lena's voice cracked. These people are professionals. They'll find a way in. Then let them try. Adrian's hand caught her arm, gentle but firm. I've been building defenses my entire life, Lena. This estate is a fortress, and I will burn it to the ground before I let them touch you. The raw intensity in his voice stole her breath. Patricia and Harrison had gone very quiet, suddenly fascinated by the photographs on the table. Why? Lena whispered. Why does it matter so much? Adrian's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, quietly enough that only she could hear, because I already failed to protect you once. I won't do it again. Before Lena could respond, Harrison cleared his throat. Security teams are arriving. I need to brief them on protocols. Adrian, we should discuss contingency plans. Go. Adrian released Lena's arm, stepping back. Patricia, start calling staff. Lena, he paused. Stay in the East Wing. Don't go anywhere alone. Understood? It wasn't really a question. Lena nodded, her arm still tingling where he'd touched her. The next 48 hours turned the mansion into an armed camp. Security personnel patrolled the grounds in shifts, Cameras covered every angle, motion sensors, pressure plates, and God knew what else transformed the estate into something out of a military installation. Most of the staff took the paid leave gratefully. Patricia stayed along with a skeleton crew of people who'd been with Adrian for years and refused to abandon him. Lena watched them work with quiet efficiency, saw the loyalty Adrian inspired, and understood for the first time the kind of man he really was. Not just powerful, not just wealthy, but someone people would fight for. She spent the days reviewing security footage, cross-referencing Margaret's access records, trying to predict where an attack might come from. The nights were harder, alone in her apartment, listening to footsteps in the halls, jumping at every sound. On the third night, she gave up on sleep entirely. She was making tea in the small kitchenette when a knock made her jump, hot water sloshing over her hand. "It's me," Adrian's voice came through the door. Lena opened it to find him in sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. His hair was disheveled, dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights matching her own. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Harrison's teams are good, but I keep running scenarios." He stepped inside when she gestured. "Every possible angle of attack, every vulnerability, it's driving me insane." "Welcome to my world." Lena poured 2 cups of tea, handed him one. "I've been going over Margaret's files. She documented everything. Security rotations, weak points in the perimeter, even personal information about staff members. She was building leverage. Insurance in case she ever needed it." Adrian took the tea but didn't drink. "I should have seen it. Should have known someone that controlling was documenting everything." "You're not omniscient, Adrian." "No, but I'm supposed to be thorough." He finally met her eyes. "I keep thinking about what Harrison said, about them using you as leverage, about what they'd do if they got their hands on you. I'm not your responsibility." "Yes, you are." His voice was rough. "You became my responsibility the moment I pulled you out of that snow. And what I said in the conference room about not failing to protect you again, I meant it, Lena. If something happened to you because of my enemies, because of choices I made..." He trailed off, but the unspoken words hung between them. Lena set down her tea with careful precision. "You can't control everything. Sometimes bad things happen to people, and it's not anyone's fault. It just is." "I don't accept that." "I know. It's one of your more frustrating qualities." She smiled slightly. "Along with the emotional repression and the tendency to shoulder responsibility for things completely outside your control." "Emotional repression?" Adrian's eyebrow arched. "That's rich, coming from someone who spent 3 years making herself invisible." "I wasn't repressing. I was surviving." "So am I." The words hit harder than they should have. Lena looked at Adrian, really looked at him, and saw past the control, the power, the icy exterior. Saw a man who'd built walls as thick as hers, who'd learned to protect himself by never letting anyone close enough to matter. Except she mattered. Somehow, despite everything, she'd gotten past his defenses. "Adrian," she said softly, "what are we doing?" "I don't know." His honesty was devastating. "I told myself I'd keep my distance, that anything between us would be inappropriate, complicated, dangerous. But then I see you, and all that logic disappears." "Same." "Yeah?" "Yeah." Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. "But Patricia's right. The power dynamic alone makes this impossible. You're my employer. I owe you everything. My job, my safety, my life. How could anything between us ever be equal?" "It couldn't." Adrian set down his tea, moved closer. "Not now. Maybe not ever. But Lena, The explosion cut him off. The east wing shook. Glass shattered. Alarms screamed to life. Adrian grabbed Lena, pulling her down as the windows blew inward, showering them with razor-sharp fragments. "Stay down!" He covered her body with his as gunfire erupted outside. Lena's ears rang. She tasted blood, realized she'd bitten her lip. Adrian's weight pressed her into the floor, solid and protective, his heart hammering against her back. "Harrison!" Adrian had his phone out, was shouting over the alarms. "East wing! Kitchen entrance! They breached the perimeter!" More gunfire. Shouting. The distinctive crack of flashbangs. Adrian hauled Lena to her feet. "We need to move, now!" "Where?" "Safe room, come on." He pulled her through the apartment into the hallway. Smoke billowed from somewhere below. Security personnel ran past, weapons drawn, faces grim. The mansion had become a war zone. Adrian navigated with absolute certainty, pulling Lena through corridors she'd never seen, down stairs that seemed to appear from nowhere. His hand gripped hers like a lifeline, and she held on with everything she had. They reached a heavy steel door hidden behind a bookshelf. Adrian punched in a code, pressed his palm to a scanner. The door opened with a hydraulic hiss. Inside. The safe room was exactly what it sounded like. Reinforced walls, independent air supply, monitors showing every camera feed in the estate. Harrison was already there, coordinating the security response with military precision. 3 breach points, he reported without looking up. East kitchen, south garden entrance, and they tried the main gate, but we shut that down. Estimate 15 hostiles heavily armed. They're pushing toward the main house. Casualties? Adrian's voice was ice. 2 of ours injured, non-critical. We've neutralized 4 of theirs. Harrison finally glanced at them. Miss Carter, you're bleeding. Lena touched her forehead, found blood. Must have been from the glass. I'm fine. Get the med kit, Adrian ordered. He was already moving to the monitors, assessing the situation with cold calculation. Where's the main group? 2nd floor, moving toward your private quarters. Harrison pulled up thermal imaging. They're looking for something, or someone. Me, Lena said quietly. They're looking for me. Probably. Harrison didn't sugarcoat it. Margaret would have told them where your apartment was, where you spend your time. They grab you. They've got their leverage. Then let them. Lena stepped forward. Let me go out there. End this. Absolutely not. Adrian didn't even look at her. Harrison, have teams 3 and 4 flank them from the west corridor. Cut off their retreat. I want them trapped. Adrian, listen to me. No. Now he turned, and the fury in his eyes made her step back. You are not sacrificing yourself. Not for me. Not for anyone. That's not how this ends. Then how does it end? With more people getting hurt? With your home destroyed? Lena's voice rose. This is my fault. This is Caruso's fault, Margaret's fault, mine, for not seeing the threat sooner. Adrian crossed to her in 2 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders. But it is not yours. You didn't ask for any of this. You didn't deserve what happened to you, and I will be damned if I let you throw yourself to those animals to save my conscience. A new explosion rocked the building. The monitors flickered, showing fire blooming in the west wing. They're getting desperate, Harrison muttered, trying to flush us out. Or destroy evidence. Adrian released Lena, returned to the monitors. How long until the police arrive? They're claiming a delayed response due to the weather. 20 minutes minimum. Caruso's people are stalling them. Adrian's smile was predatory. Good. That gives us time to finish this properly. Harrison, activate Protocol 7. Harrison's eyes widened. Sir, that's... I know what it is. Do it. What's Protocol 7? Lena asked. Something I hoped I'd never have to use. Adrian was already typing commands into the security system. This house has fail-safes, hidden defenses, things I built when I first moved here, back when I had more enemies than allies. On the monitors, Lena watched as sections of the mansion transformed. Steel shutters dropped over windows, doorways sealed, corridors filled with tear gas. It was like watching the building itself become a weapon. The thermal imaging showed the hostile forces scattering, disoriented, trapped in sections of the house that had become killing boxes. Teams 1 through 6, sweep and clear, Harrison ordered into his radio. Non-lethal where possible, but protect yourselves. Mark your targets. The next 20 minutes were brutal. Lena watched on the monitors as Adrian's security teams moved with surgical precision, taking down Caruso's men one by one. Some surrendered, some fought back. The mansion's elegant halls became a battlefield, and Adrian orchestrated it all with cold efficiency. This was the man the business world feared, the predator who'd built an empire on calculated violence. And he was doing it to protect her. When the last hostile was subdued, Harrison let out a long breath. Clear, all areas secure. Final count, 12 captured, 3 escaped, 2 dead, both from friendly fire before we could intervene. The escapees? Adrian asked. Running. We've got their plates, their faces on camera. They won't get far. Adrian nodded, already moving toward the door. Get the wounded medical attention. Contact our lawyers. We'll need them when the police finally decide to show up. And Harrison? Find out who in the department delayed response. I want names. Already on it. Lena followed Adrian out of the safe room, her legs shaking with adrenaline. The mansion looked like a war zone. Broken glass, scorch marks, the acrid smell of smoke and tear gas. Security personnel moved through the halls, securing the prisoners, documenting everything. Patricia appeared from somewhere, her face pale but composed. Everyone's accounted for. The staff who stayed are safe. Minor injuries only, thank heaven. Good. Adrian was already walking, heading toward the main entrance. Call them all together. I need to speak with them. Adrian, you should rest. Now, Patricia. 10 minutes later, the remaining staff gathered in the main hall. Maybe 20 people total, looking exhausted and shaken, but alive. Adrian stood before them, and Lena saw every eye fixed on him with absolute attention. Tonight, people came into my home with the intent to harm those under my protection, Adrian began, his voice carrying clearly. They failed. They failed because you were brave enough to stay when I gave you the chance to leave, because you trusted me to keep you safe, and you trusted each other to stand together. He paused, letting that sink in. I won't lie to you. This isn't over. The people responsible for this attack are still out there. They'll face justice, legal justice, not the kind they tried to deliver tonight. But until they do, there's still risk. Adrian's gaze swept the room. So I'm giving you another choice. Leave now with 6 months severance and my gratitude. Or stay, with increased security and the knowledge that you're part of something worth defending. The choice is yours. No judgment either way. Nobody moved. Then one of the older security guards stepped forward. With respect, Mr. Voss, we already made our choice when we stayed the first time. His voice was rough. You've always treated us fair, paid us well, protected us when others would have thrown us to the wolves. We're not running now. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Patricia stepped up beside the guard. He's right. We're staying. Adrian's expression didn't change, but Lena saw his throat work, saw the emotion he was suppressing. Then you have my word. I will do everything in my power to end this threat and ensure your safety. Thank you. The group dispersed, returning to their duties with renewed purpose. Lena watched them go, saw the loyalty Adrian inspired, and felt something shift in her chest. You're good at that, she said quietly. At what? Making people believe in you. Adrian turned to her, and the exhaustion in his eyes was startling. I just tell them the truth. It's worked so far. Adrian, Lena started, but Harrison appeared with his phone out. We've got a problem. One of the men we captured is talking, says this was just the opening move. Caruso's planning something bigger. Bigger than a direct assault on my home? He says Caruso wants to make an example. Show the whole region what happens when you cross him. Harrison's jaw tightened. And he specifically mentioned Ms. Carter, said she's the key to breaking you. Adrian went very still. Where is Caruso now? Unknown. Gone to ground after this failed. Harrison pulled up a map on his phone. But my contacts say he's got a compound about 60 miles north, heavily defended. If he's planning his next move, he's doing it from there. Then we go to him. Adrian's voice was flat, final. Before he comes for us again. Adrian, that's not a suggestion, Harrison. I want a tactical plan on my desk in 1 hour. Full assault team. We end this tonight. You can't be serious, Lena interjected. You're talking about attacking a crime boss in his own territory. That's suicide. It's strategy. Adrian's eyes met hers. Caruso wants a war? I'll give him one. On my terms. And what if you lose? I won't. The certainty in his voice was absolute. Because I have something Caruso doesn't understand. Something he can't buy or steal or destroy. What's that? Adrian's hand found hers, his fingers lacing through hers with unexpected gentleness. Something worth fighting for. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning Lena didn't dare examine too closely. Around them, the mansion hummed with purposeful activity, security teams regrouping, damage being assessed, war being prepared. And Lena realized with cold clarity that everything was about to change again. That the violence tonight was just the beginning. That Adrian was about to walk into genuine danger, and there was nothing she could do to stop him, except walk beside him. If you're going, she said quietly, I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You don't get to decide that. Lena squeezed his hand. You said I'm not a weakness. Prove it. Let me help end this. Adrian looked at her for a long moment, and Lena saw the war behind his eyes, the need to protect her fighting against respect for her choice. Finally, he nodded. Harrison will want to kill me for this. But all right, you come. But you follow orders, stay behind our teams, and if I say run, you run. Agreed? Agreed. Outside, dawn was breaking over the ravaged estate. Inside, plans were being made for the kind of violence that ended wars. And in the quiet space between heartbeats, Lena and Adrian stood together, their hands still linked, preparing to face whatever came next. Together. Harrison's tactical plan covered the conference table like a blueprint for controlled chaos. Satellite imagery showed Caruso's compound, a sprawling estate hidden behind trees and high walls, dotted with guard towers and surveillance equipment. It looked impenetrable. Adrian studied it with the same focused intensity he brought to hostile business acquisitions. Lena watched him work, saw the wheels turning behind those ice-blue eyes, and wondered if this was how he'd built his empire. By seeing patterns where others saw only obstacles. 3 entry points, Harrison said, indicating the map. Main gate, service entrance, and a weak spot in the north wall where the surveillance overlaps create a blind zone. My recommendation is a 3-team approach. Distraction at the main gate, primary assault through the north wall, and a 3rd team securing the service entrance for extraction. Guards? Adrian asked. Estimate 20 to 30. Well armed but not military trained. Caruso relies on intimidation and numbers, not tactical superiority. Harrison pulled up thermal imaging from an earlier surveillance pass. Most of them cluster near the main house. If we hit fast and hard, we can neutralize the outer perimeter before they organize a defense. And Caruso himself? Probably in the main house. He's got a secure room on the 2nd floor, reinforced, independent power, the works. If he goes to ground there, we'll need time to crack it. Time we won't have. Adrian's fingers drummed the table. Local law enforcement? Caruso owns the sheriff and half the county deputies. We go in, we're on our own until we can get state police involved. That means a narrow window, maybe 45 minutes before things get legally complicated. Lena had been quiet, listening, trying to understand the calculus of violence Adrian was performing. Now she spoke up. What about Margaret and Crawford? If they're at the compound, they could identify us, warn Caruso. Good point. Adrian looked at her with something like approval. Harrison, do we have confirmation they're there? Margaret's car was spotted at the compound yesterday. Crawford's off the grid, but my money says he's there too. They're Caruso's intel. He'll keep them close until this plays out. Then we need to move before they can prepare a counter strategy. Adrian checked his watch. How soon can we be ready? Teams are assembling now. Gear check, route planning, final briefing. We could move in 4 hours. Make it 3. Adrian stood and the meeting shifted into action. I want full tactical gear for everyone. Non-lethal options where possible, but our people are authorized to use necessary force. No heroes, no unnecessary risks. We go in, neutralize the threat, extract, and let the authorities clean up the aftermath. Harrison nodded, already typing on his tablet. The security personnel began filing out, moving with purposeful urgency. Only Patricia remained, her expression carved from worry. Adrian, this is madness, she said quietly. You're risking everything, your life, your business, your freedom if this goes wrong. Let the police handle it. The police won't handle it. Caruso owns them. Adrian's voice was gentle, but immovable. And every day he's out there is another day he's planning his next move. I can't live like that, Patricia. None of us can. And her? Patricia's gaze flicked to Lena. You're really letting her walk into this? I can't stop her. Adrian looked at Lena, and something passed between them. Understanding, trust, the kind of connection that didn't need words. And I won't treat her like she's fragile when she's proven she's anything but. Patricia sighed. You're both out of your minds. But I suppose that's what happens when stubborn people fall for each other. She held up a hand before either could protest. Don't bother denying it. I've got eyes. Just try to come back alive so I can say I told you so. She left before they could respond. Lena and Adrian stood alone in the conference room, the tactical maps between them like the space neither seemed willing to cross. You don't have to do this, Adrian said finally. We've already had this conversation. I know. But Lena, If something happens to you because I brought you into this, then it's my choice, my risk. She moved around the table, closing the distance between them. You've been protecting me since the night you found me in the snow. Maybe it's time you let me return the favor. I don't need protecting. Everyone needs protecting sometimes. Lena's hand found his, her fingers still bandaged but healing. Even you. Adrian looked down at their joined hands, and something in his expression cracked. I've spent my entire adult life maintaining control, building walls, keeping people at exactly the right distance to be useful, but never close enough to matter. His eyes met hers. And then you show up, and suddenly all those carefully constructed defenses don't mean anything. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I honestly don't know. His other hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with unexpected tenderness. But I know that the thought of something happening to you terrifies me in a way nothing else ever has. Lena's breath caught. They were standing so close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of silver in his blue eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. Close enough that all she'd have to do is rise up on her toes and... Mr. Voss? Harrison's voice crackled over the intercom. We need you in the armory for gear selection. The moment shattered. Adrian stepped back, his hand dropping from her face, the walls slamming back into place so fast Lena felt the displacement. Coming? Adrian said, his voice once again perfectly controlled. He looked at Lena. You should get some rest. We move in 3 hours. He was gone before she could argue. Lena stood alone in the conference room, her heart hammering, her skin still tingling where he'd touched her, and wondered how the hell she was supposed to rest when the world was about to explode. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Lena was fitted with body armor that felt heavy and foreign, given a communication headset, and subjected to a rapid-fire safety briefing from one of Harrison's team members. She learned how to identify cover, how to move in formation, how to drop flat if she heard the word contact. It felt surreal. 2 months ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was suiting up for a tactical assault on a crime lord's compound. She found Adrian in the garage, checking weapons with mechanical precision. He changed into all black, tactical pants, fitted shirt, boots that looked like they could kick through steel. The transformation from businessman to soldier was complete and terrifying. You know how to shoot? He asked without looking up. No. Good. Don't start now. You're there to observe and identify Margaret and Crawford. Nothing more. He finally met her eyes. You stay with Harrison's team at all times. If shooting starts, you get behind cover and stay there. Clear? Crystal. I mean it, Lena. This isn't a game. These people will kill you without hesitation. I know. She moved closer, watching him load magazines with practiced efficiency. Adrian, what happens after? If we survive this? He paused, a magazine halfway loaded. What do you mean? I mean us. This thing between us that we keep dancing around. What happens to it when the danger's gone and reality sets back in? Adrian set down the magazine with careful precision. Honestly, I don't know. The smart thing would be to maintain professional distance. You work for me. Getting involved would be complicated, potentially damaging to both of us. That's what your head says. What does the rest of you say? He looked at her for a long moment. The rest of me says that life's too short to play it safe. That I've spent 32 years building an empire. And I'm not sure what the point of it is if I can't share it with someone who actually gives a damn about more than my bank account. His voice dropped. The rest of me says that you're the first person in a decade who makes me feel like I'm more than just a collection of assets and strategies. Lena's throat tightened. Adrian, but that conversation needs to wait until after we've dealt with Caruso. Because I can't think clearly when you're looking at me like that, and I need to be clear-headed for what's coming. He returned to loading the magazine. So ask me again when this is over, and I promise I'll give you a real answer. It was both a promise and a deflection. Lena recognized it for what it was. Adrian protecting himself the only way he knew how, by compartmentalizing, by putting emotion in a box until it was safe to examine. She could respect that, even if it made her want to shake him. Okay, she said quietly. After, he agreed. 30 minutes later, they were rolling out in a convoy of black SUVs, Harrison's teams distributed across 3 vehicles. Lena rode in the second vehicle with Adrian and 4 security personnel, watching the city give way to rural darkness as they headed north. The mood was tense but controlled. The team members checked equipment, reviewed the plan in quiet voices, maintained the kind of focused calm that came from professional training. Lena felt distinctly out of place among them, a civilian playing dress-up in someone else's war. Adrian sat beside her, his shoulder touching hers in the cramped vehicle, his presence both comforting and electric. He was reviewing satellite imagery on a tablet, occasionally conferring with Harrison via encrypted radio. ETA 15 minutes, the driver announced. The team went quiet. Weapons were checked one final time. Night vision goggles were tested. Lena's heart rate kicked into overdrive. "Remember the plan?" Harrison's voice came through the comms. "Team 1 takes the main gate, makes noise, draws attention. Team 2, that's us, hits the north wall, moves through to the main house. Team 3 secures extraction. We're looking for Caruso, Margaret, and Crawford. Anyone else gets zip-tied and left for the authorities. Questions?" Silence. "Good. Comms check." Each team member responded in turn. When it was Lena's turn, her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Carter, check." "Carter, you stick to me like glue," Harrison ordered. "Your job is identification only. You see Margaret or Crawford, you point them out and get back. Understood?" "Understood." The vehicles killed their lights as they approached the compound. Through the windshield, Lena could see the high walls, the guard towers, the cold white glow of security lights. It looked even more imposing in person than in the satellite images. They stopped a quarter-mile out, disembarking in silence. The night was cold and clear, the stars brilliant overhead. Lena's breath plumed in the freezing air as she followed the team through the trees. Adrian moved beside her, his hand occasionally touching her back, guiding, reassuring. He'd transformed completely into this tactical version of himself, all sharp focus and controlled violence. It should have been frightening. Instead, Lena found it mesmerizing. They reached the north wall. Harrison signaled, and 2 team members moved forward with cutting equipment. The wall was chain link topped with razor wire, backed by a secondary fence. The team worked with quiet efficiency, creating an opening large enough to slip through. "Team 1, your go," Harrison whispered into his radio. In the distance, Lena heard shouting, then gunfire. The distraction had begun. "Move," Harrison ordered. They slipped through the gap in the fence, moving low and fast across open ground toward the main house. Security lights swept the compound, but the team moved in their blind spots, using shadows and timing to stay invisible. Lena's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. This was insane. This was suicide. This was... Adrian's hand found hers in the darkness, squeezed once, then released. They reached the house. Harrison posted 2 team members as sentries, then led the rest, Adrian, Lena, and 3 others, inside through a service door that had been left unlocked by an inside contact. The interior was dimly lit, surprisingly normal. Hardwood floors, expensive furniture. It could have been any wealthy person's home, except for the guards patrolling the halls with automatic weapons. Harrison signaled, and the team split. 2 members moved left to clear the ground floor. Harrison, Adrian, Lena, and 1 other moved toward the stairs. They'd made it 3 steps up when a guard appeared on the landing. For a frozen second, everyone stared at each other. Then the guard's hand moved toward his radio. Harrison's suppressed weapon coughed twice. The guard dropped, not dead, but unconscious from the tranquilizer rounds. 2 team members appeared from nowhere, zip-tying him and dragging him into a side room. "So much for stealth," Adrian muttered. They moved faster now, knowing their window was closing. The second floor was a maze of corridors and rooms. Harrison moved with absolute certainty, following the blueprint he'd memorized. Voices echoed from somewhere ahead. A door slammed. More guards appeared. 3 of them, armed and alert. "Contact!" Harrison shouted. The hallway erupted in chaos. Harrison's team engaged with precise fire, aiming for center mass with tranquilizer rounds. The guards returned fire with live ammunition. Lena hit the floor as Adrian covered her with his body, pressing her into the carpet as bullets chewed through the walls above them. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, but felt like hours. When the shooting stopped, all 3 guards were down, and Harrison was already moving forward. "Everyone good?" he called. Affirmatives came back. Lena realized she was shaking, adrenaline flooding her system so hard she could barely think. "Stay with me," Adrian said, pulling her to her feet. They moved deeper into the house. More guards appeared and were neutralized. Team 1's distraction at the main gate had drawn most of the compound's security, but enough remained inside to make progress costly. Finally, they reached a reinforced door. Harrison tried the handle. Locked. "This is it," he said. "Caruso's panic room." "Can you open it?" Adrian asked. "Given time, yes, but we don't have time." Harrison checked his watch. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before local law enforcement shows up, even with Caruso's influence." "Then we make him come out." Adrian pulled out his phone, dialed a number. It rang once, twice, then a familiar voice answered. "Who the hell is this?" "Vincent Caruso," Adrian said calmly. "My name is Adrian Voss. I believe you've been looking for me." A pause. Then laughter, cold and sharp. "You've got balls, I'll give you that. Coming into my house, attacking my people. You think that makes you tough?" "I think it makes me efficient. Your assault on my estate failed. Margaret Hollis and James Crawford sold you bad intelligence. Now you're trapped in your safe room while my team secures your compound and the FBI is en route with warrants for racketeering, assault, and attempted murder." Another pause, longer this time. "You're bluffing." "I don't bluff, Mr. Caruso. I plan." Adrian's voice was ice. "You wanted to make an example? Congratulations. You've succeeded. Just not the way you intended. By tomorrow, every criminal organization in the region will know what happens when you come after me and mine." "You self-righteous piece of—" "Here's what's going to happen," Adrian interrupted. "You're going to open that door. You're going to surrender Margaret Hollis and James Crawford, and you're going to sit quietly while the authorities arrive. In exchange, I won't level this building with you inside it." "You don't have the firepower." "Team 3 confirmation?" Adrian said into his radio. A voice crackled back. "Charges placed on primary supports, ready on your command." Silence from the phone. Then, barely audible. "You're insane. I'm thorough. You have 60 seconds to decide. Open the door, or I bring the building down and we dig you out of the rubble." Adrian ended the call. "Please tell me we don't actually have explosives on the building," Lena whispered. "We don't," Harrison muttered. "But he doesn't know that." 30 seconds passed. 45. Lena was certain Caruso would call the bluff. Then the door's locks disengaged with a heavy click. It swung open slowly. Vincent Caruso stood in the doorway, a heavy-set man in his 50s with cold eyes and a gun in his hand. "Drop it," Harrison ordered, his weapon trained on Caruso's center mass. Caruso dropped the gun. Behind him, Lena could see two figures, Margaret Hollis, looking pale and terrified, and James Crawford, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. "Lena?" Adrian said quietly. "That's them," she confirmed. "Margaret and Crawford." "Good." Adrian stepped forward, and something in his expression made even Caruso flinch. "Vincent Caruso, you're going to have a lot of time to regret coming after me. But right now, I want you to understand something very clearly." He moved closer, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper but sharp as broken glass. "The woman behind me, the one you plan to kidnap, torture, use as leverage, she's not a weakness. She's the line you should never have crossed. And now every person in this region will know that touching what's mine means war. Complete, total, uncompromising war." Adrian's smile was terrifying. "So thank you, Mr. Caruso, for giving me the opportunity to make that lesson very, very clear." Outside, sirens wailed. Not local police, state patrol, FBI, agencies that couldn't be bought. Adrian had made his calls, pulled his strings, ensured that when the authorities arrived, they'd be the right ones. Harrison's team zip-tied Caruso, Margaret, and Crawford with professional efficiency. More guards were rounded up from throughout the compound, processed, secured. Within 30 minutes, the estate was swarming with federal agents. Lena stood in the cold night air, watching the organized chaos, trying to process what had just happened. They'd done it, actually done it, walked into a crime lord's fortress and walked out victorious. Adrian appeared beside her, somehow still calm despite the violence and chaos. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so. You?" "Better now that this is finished." He looked at her. really looked at her, and some of the ice in his expression melted. You were incredibly brave tonight. I was terrified. Bravery and terror aren't mutually exclusive. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. Come on. Let's go home. Home. The word carried weight Lena hadn't expected. The mansion, damaged, imperfect, but still standing, suddenly felt like exactly that. The ride back was quieter than the ride out. Exhaustion settled over the team like a blanket. Lena dozed against Adrian's shoulder, his arm around her keeping her steady as the SUV navigated the dark roads. She woke as they pulled up to the estate. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The mansion looked battered, windows broken, scorch marks on the walls, signs of last night's battle everywhere. But it was standing. They were standing. Ms. Carter, Harrison said as they climbed out of the vehicle, that was good work tonight. You identified the targets, kept your head under fire, followed orders. I'd work with you again. Coming from Harrison, it was high praise. Lena felt herself flush. Thank you. The team dispersed, heading for their quarters and well-deserved rest. Patricia was waiting in the entrance hall, her face tight with worry until she saw them. Then she burst into tears. You absolute idiots, she sobbed, pulling both Adrian and Lena into a fierce hug. Don't ever do that to me again. No promises, Adrian said, but his voice was gentle. Patricia pulled back, wiping her eyes. The staff is asking about you. They want to know if it's over. It's over, Adrian confirmed. Caruso's in federal custody. Margaret and Crawford are facing charges. The threat is neutralized. Thank heaven. Patricia squeezed Lena's hand. I'll let everyone know. You two should rest. She left them standing in the entrance hall, alone except for the morning light streaming through the damaged windows. Adrian turned to Lena. You asked me earlier what happens after. What happens to us? Lena's heart stuttered. I remember. I've been thinking about it. During the assault, during the drive back, trying to find the logical answer, the smart play. He stepped closer. But I keep coming back to the same conclusion. Which is? That I don't want smart. I don't want logical. His hand came up to cup her face, the gesture achingly familiar now. I want you, despite every complication, despite the power dynamic and the professional ethics and all the reasons this is a terrible idea. I want you in my life, Lena. Not as an employee, as... He paused, searching for words. As someone who matters. Someone I can't imagine facing another day without. Lena's breath caught. Adrian, I know it's complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons to say no, but I also know that life's too short to let fear make our choices for us. You taught me that, standing in the snow, refusing to die, fighting your way back. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. So I'm asking, give me a chance. Give us a chance. Lena looked at him, this complicated, brilliant, damaged man who'd saved her life and given her a future, who'd walked into hell tonight to protect her, who was offering her everything with terrifying honesty. She thought about the smart answer, the safe answer, the answer that protected her from potential heartbreak. Then she thought about what she actually wanted. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay, let's try. Let's see what this could be. She smiled. But I have conditions. Of course you do. I want a formal transfer. I won't work directly for you anymore. Patricia can be my supervisor, or we restructure my role entirely. I won't have people saying I slept my way into this position. Done. What else? We take this slow. No rushing into anything. We figure out how to make this work without destroying what we've built professionally. Agreed. Adrian's smile was genuine now, warm in a way she'd rarely seen. Anything else? Yeah. Lena rose up on her toes, closing the final distance between them. Stop talking. She kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative, testing. Then Adrian's arms came around her, pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff at the same time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I should probably tell you something, he said quietly. What? I'm terrible at relationships. I work too much. I'm controlling, I have trust issues, and enough emotional baggage to fill a warehouse. Lena laughed. Well, I'm broke, I have crippling medical debt, and I come with enough trauma to keep a therapist busy for years, so I'd say we're evenly matched. Sounds perfect. Sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. That too. Adrian kissed her again, soft and sweet. But maybe it's worth it anyway. Lena thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. The cruelty, the near death, the violence and chaos. All the broken pieces that had somehow rearranged themselves into something like hope. Yeah, she said against his lips. Maybe it is. But even as they stood there, wrapped in each other in the morning light, neither of them noticed the shadow watching from the tree line beyond the estate's walls. The threat from Caruso might be neutralized. But Vincent Caruso had been a business partner to others with longer memories and deeper resources, others who'd watched Adrian Voss dismantle one of their own and decided he'd grown too powerful to ignore. The war wasn't over. It had barely begun. But for now, in the quiet space between one battle and the next, Lena and Adrian had found something worth protecting, something that made all the coming storms feel survivable. They had each other. And sometimes that was enough. The shadow in the tree line materialized into a threat 48 hours later. Lena was in her new office, Patricia's former space, refurbished and relocated to maintain professional separation from Adrian, when Harrison appeared in the doorway with the expression she'd learned meant trouble. "We've got movement," he said without preamble. 3 black sedans spotted on the access road. No plates, tinted windows. They're not trying to hide. Lena's blood went cold. Caruso's people? Worse. Caruso was small-time compared to who he partnered with. Harrison pulled up footage on his tablet. The Korvath Syndicate, Eastern European organized crime. They've been quiet in this region for years, but Caruso was their local distributor. When Adrian took him down, he disrupted their entire supply chain, and now they're coming for payback. Not just payback, re-establishment. They want to make an example that terrifies everyone else into compliance. Harrison's jaw tightened. And they want Adrian. Lena was already standing. Where is he? En route back from a meeting in the city. I've got a security detail with him, but if Korvath intercepts... He didn't need to finish the sentence. The next hour was brutal waiting. Lena paced the security room while Harrison coordinated with Adrian's protection detail, tracking the convoy's progress as 3 black sedans shadowed them on the highway. The estate went into lockdown again. Security teams deployed, staff evacuated to safe rooms, every defense system activated. Patricia found Lena in the chaos, gripped her hands tight. He'll be okay. Adrian survived worse. But her voice shook, and Lena knew she was trying to convince herself as much as anyone else. The convoy made it back, but barely. Adrian's SUV roared through the gates with the black sedans in pursuit, gunfire shattering the afternoon quiet. The estate's automated defenses engaged. Reinforced barriers rose from the driveway, tire spikes deployed, and Adrian's vehicle made it through seconds before the barricades sealed. The black sedan stopped at the perimeter. Didn't retreat, just waited. Adrian stormed into the security room, his suit jacket torn, a cut above his eyebrow bleeding freely. His eyes found Lena first, scanned her for injury, and some of the tension left his shoulders when he confirmed she was safe. "Report," he ordered Harrison. 3 vehicles, estimate 12 hostiles, military-grade weapons. They're not moving, just watching. Harrison zoomed in on the lead sedan. They sent this. He held up a phone showing a text message with a single photo attached. Lena's stomach dropped when she saw it. A picture of her, taken yesterday in town, running errands. The message below was simple. We know where she goes, where she'll be. Give us what we want, or she disappears. Adrian's expression went absolutely arctic. What do they want? You. Public surrender. Trial by their justice, not ours. They want to execute you on live stream as a warning to anyone else who thinks about interfering with their operations. Absolutely not, Lena said before Adrian could respond. That's not happening. It might have to. Adrian was already moving, pulling up maps and schematics. If it keeps everyone else safe, no. Lena crossed to him, forced him to look at her. We don't negotiate with terrorists. You taught me that. And you don't get to martyr yourself because you feel responsible for this. I am responsible. My actions created this situation. Your actions stopped a crime lord from hurting innocent people. The fact that his partners are vindictive psychopaths isn't your fault. Lena's voice hardened. And I didn't survive a blizzard and a firefight just to watch you surrender to people who want you dead. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Then what do you suggest? We end this, permanently. Lena turned to Harrison. The Corvath Syndicate, they're not just here for revenge. They want to reestablish their operations, right? They need this region for their supply chain. That's our assessment, yes. Then we make it impossible for them to operate here. We don't just defend, we dismantle their entire network. Lena was surprised by the certainty in her own voice. Adrian, you've got connections in law enforcement now, federal contacts. You brought down Caruso in 48 hours. Can you do the same to Corvath? Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then a slow smile spread across his face, predatory, calculating, the expression of a man who'd just found his strategy. Harrison, get me everything we have on Corvath operations in the tri-state area. Every business front, every property, every known associate. Adrian was already dialing his phone, and get Director Chen at the FBI on the line. It's time to call in some favors. The next 72 hours became a masterclass in controlled demolition. Adrian orchestrated it like a symphony of destruction, using every resource at his disposal to tear apart the Corvath Syndicate's infrastructure. Federal raids hit 12 Corvath properties simultaneously: warehouses, nightclubs, legitimate businesses that served as money laundering fronts. Financial institutions froze accounts. Import licenses were revoked. Partners were arrested on charges ranging from racketeering to human trafficking, and Adrian made sure everyone knew who was behind it. You want a war? He said during a press conference, standing in front of federal agents and local media. You've got one. Every illegal operation in this region, every corrupt official, every criminal enterprise that thinks violence is the answer, you're all on notice. This ends now. The 3 black sedans outside the estate disappeared after the first day of raids, but Adrian knew better than to think that meant victory. Corvath was wounded, not dead, and wounded animals were the most dangerous. On the 4th night, the counterattack came. Lena was working late in her office when the lights died. Emergency power kicked in immediately, bathing the mansion in red emergency lighting. Her radio crackled. All personnel, active breach. Multiple entry points. This is not a drill. She was on her feet immediately, her heart hammering. The security protocols they drilled kicked in. She grabbed the emergency kit from under her desk, locked the office door, and moved to the reinforced panic room hidden behind the bookshelf. But before she could reach it, the office door exploded inward. 2 men in tactical gear stormed in, weapons raised. Lena's training from the Caruso raid took over. She dropped, rolled behind the desk, grabbed the heavy letter opener she kept in the top drawer. It was a pathetic weapon against trained killers, but it was all she had. Lena Carter, one of them said in accented English. You're coming with us. Like hell I am. She threw the letter opener. It wasn't meant to hit, just to distract. In the half-second they flinched, Lena lunged for the panic button Harrison had installed on the wall. Her finger hit it just as a hand grabbed her hair, yanking her back. Pain exploded through her scalp. She screamed, more from rage than fear, and drove her elbow back into her attacker's gut. He grunted but didn't release her. Instead, he slammed her face first into the desk. Stars burst behind her eyes. She tasted blood. Enough, the second man ordered. Boss wants her alive. They zip-tied her hands, hauled her to her feet. Lena's vision swam, but she forced herself to focus. The panic button had been pressed. Harrison knew. Adrian knew. She just had to survive until help arrived. They dragged her through corridors filled with smoke and gunfire. The mansion had become a war zone again, but this time the attackers were professionals. Corvath had sent their best. They were almost to the exit when Adrian appeared. He came around the corner like vengeance incarnate, his weapon raised, his expression absolutely lethal. The 2 men holding Lena reacted instantly. One shoved her aside while both opened fire. Adrian dropped behind cover, returning fire with controlled precision. Lena hit the floor hard, her bound hands making it impossible to catch herself. She felt ribs crack, pain stealing her breath. The firefight lasted maybe 10 seconds. When it ended, both of Lena's captors were down, and Adrian was across the hall, checking them for vitals with cold efficiency. Lena. He was beside her in an instant, cutting the zip ties, his hands gentle despite the violence still raging around them. Are you hurt? Ribs, maybe broken. She tried to sit up and gasped at the pain. Adrian, they were going to take me. I know, it's okay. You're safe now. He was already calling for a medic on his radio, his other hand cupping her face. Just breathe. Help is coming. The attack. Harrison's teams are containing it. We've got 12 hostiles down, 3 captured. The rest are retreating. Adrian's thumb brushed her cheekbone, his eyes searching hers. You hit the panic button. That was smart thinking. I wasn't going to let them take me without a fight. I know. His smile was fierce, proud. You never do. The medic arrived, Dr. Chen, who'd become a permanent fixture since the first attack. She examined Lena with practiced hands, confirmed 2 cracked ribs and a concussion, and ordered immediate rest. I'll rest when this is over, Lena said through gritted teeth. It is over, Adrian said quietly. This was their last play. They threw everything at us tonight, and we held. Korvath doesn't have the resources for another assault like this. How do you know? Because Harrison just confirmed that federal agents arrested their leadership 3 hours ago. The raids we coordinated hit their central command structure. What we're seeing tonight is the remains of their operation, desperate, uncoordinated, doomed to fail. Adrian helped her to her feet, supporting her weight. It's over, Lena. We won. But Lena knew better than to believe in easy victories. What about retaliation? Korvath's international. They've got resources we can't even imagine. They do. But they're also pragmatists. They've lost millions in this region. Dozens of their people are in custody, and their entire supply chain is compromised. Continuing to come after me costs them more than cutting their losses and rebuilding elsewhere. Adrian guided her toward the medical suite. I've also made it very clear through certain channels that any further action against me or mine will result in me using my considerable resources to hunt them across every border on Earth. Sometimes the best defense is ensuring the enemy knows the cost of attack outweighs any possible benefit. It made brutal sense. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to poke holes in the logic, but exhaustion and pain were making coherent thought difficult. Dr. Chen gave her something for the pain and ordered bed rest. Lena drifted in and out of consciousness for the next few hours, aware of Adrian's presence nearby, his hand occasionally touching hers as if confirming she was still there. When she finally woke fully, sunlight was streaming through the windows. Adrian sat in the chair beside her bed, looking exhausted but alert. How long was I out? She asked, her voice rough. About 12 hours. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a truck. Lena tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. What's the damage? To you? 2 cracked ribs, mild concussion, various bruises. You'll be sore for a few weeks, but fully healed in 6 to 8. Adrian's expression darkened. To the estate? Minimal, actually. They got through the perimeter, but we stopped them before they could do serious damage. No casualties on our side. 14 Korvath operatives in custody, 3 dead. And their leadership? In federal custody. The FBI arrested the Korvath Syndicate's entire North American command structure based on evidence we provided. They're facing charges that will put them away for decades. Adrian leaned forward. It's really over, Lena. The threat is neutralized. Lena wanted to believe it, needed to believe it, but fear had become a reflex and letting go of it felt impossible. Hey. Adrian took her hand, his touch gentle. I know it's hard to trust that we're safe, but I promise you, I've taken every precaution. Enhanced security, ongoing monitoring, connections with law enforcement that will alert us to any new threats before they materialize. We're not letting our guard down, but we're also not living in constant fear anymore. How do you know the difference? We don't, not completely, but we make a choice about what kind of life we want to live. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I spent most of my adult life building walls to keep danger out. And you know what I discovered? Walls keep out the danger, but they also keep out everything worth having: connection, trust, love. The last word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Adrian, I'm not asking you to say it back. I'm just telling you that despite everything, the violence, the chaos, the very real possibility that loving you could get me killed, I don't regret a single moment. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. You make me want to be more than just surviving, Lena. You make me want to actually live. Lena's throat tightened with emotion. You're making it really hard to maintain emotional distance while I'm injured and vulnerable. Good, I'm tired of distance. Adrian leaned closer, careful not to jostle her injuries. When you're healed, I want to take you somewhere. Away from the mansion, away from all of this. Somewhere we can just be two people figuring out what this is between us without the weight of everything else. Like a vacation? Like a beginning. His eyes held hers. What do you say? Lena thought about saying no. About all the reasons this was complicated and messy and potentially disastrous. About power dynamics and professional ethics and the very real possibility of heartbreak. Then she thought about what she actually wanted. And the answer was simple. Okay, she whispered. Yes. Adrian's smile was radiant. He kissed her forehead with infinite gentleness, then sat back. Then rest, heal, and when you're ready, we'll figure out the rest together. The next 6 weeks passed in a strange sort of peace. Lena's ribs healed slowly, her body recovering from accumulated trauma. The mansion was rebuilt, its scars covered but not forgotten. Staff returned, life resumed its rhythms, and the threat of violence receded into memory. Federal prosecutors built their case against Corvath. Margaret Hollis and James Crawford were arraigned on multiple charges. Vincent Caruso cooperated with investigators in exchange for a reduced sentence, providing information that dismantled criminal networks across 3 states. And through it all, Lena and Adrian navigated their new reality with careful attention. True to his word, Adrian had restructured Lena's position. She now reported to Patricia, focusing on household operations with complete professional separation from Adrian's business ventures. It wasn't perfect. People still whispered, still wondered, but it was legitimate, earned. Their personal relationship developed with deliberate slowness. Dinner conversations that lasted hours. Long walks through the rebuilt gardens. Quiet evenings in the library, reading in comfortable silence. Adrian was learning to be vulnerable. Lena was learning to trust. It was terrifying and exhilarating and more real than anything Lena had experienced in her entire life. 2 months after the final Corvath attack, Adrian made good on his promise. They flew to a private island he owned off the coast. No security detail, no staff, just the 2 of them and an empty beach house stocked with everything they needed. The first morning, Lena woke to sunlight and the sound of waves. She found Adrian on the beach, coffee in hand, staring at the horizon. Couldn't sleep? She asked, joining him. Didn't want to. I kept thinking I'd wake up and this would all be a dream. He pulled her close, his arm around her waist. You, this place, the fact that we're actually here and safe and alive, it feels impossible. Good impossible or bad impossible? The best kind. Adrian kissed her temple. I've been thinking about something. About the future. Lena's heart stuttered. That sounds ominous. It's not. Or maybe it is. I'm not sure. He turned to face her fully. Lena, I've spent my entire life building an empire. Companies, properties, wealth beyond what I could ever spend. And I'm good at it. But it's also hollow, empty. Just numbers and accounts and buildings that don't mean anything. Adrian, where is this going? I want to use it for something that matters, something real. His eyes were intense. I want to start a foundation. Something focused on helping people like you, people drowning in medical debt, people who've been crushed by systems designed to keep them down. I want to use all this power and money to actually make a difference instead of just accumulating more. Lena stared at him. You're serious? Completely. And I want you to run it. Before she could protest, he continued, not because we're together, because you understand what it's like to need help and have nowhere to turn, because you're smart and driven and you actually give a damn about people, because I trust you with this more than I'd trust anyone else. That's huge, Adrian. That's terrifying. Yeah, but also right. It feels right. He took her hands. You don't have to answer now. Think about it. But Lena, I need you to know something. Whether you say yes or no to the foundation, whether this thing between us works out or falls apart, you've already changed my life. You've made me remember that there's more to existence than just winning, and I'll be grateful for that for the rest of my life. Lena's eyes burned with tears. You're really bad at casual vacations. You know that, right? Adrian laughed. Apparently. So? What do you think? I think. Lena paused, considering. a foundation, real power to help people, the opportunity to turn her suffering into something meaningful. I think yes, to all of it. The foundation, this relationship, whatever comes next. I'm saying yes. The kiss they shared tasted like salt air and new beginnings. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. There's one more thing, Adrian said, but this one can wait. I don't want to overwhelm you. Now you have to tell me. I will, but not today. Today is just about us. He pulled her down to sit in the sand, their backs against a piece of driftwood, the ocean stretching endlessly before them. Tell me about your mother, about who she was before the illness. So Lena did. She talked about summer gardens and terrible jokes and the way her mother sang off-key while cooking, about strength and grace and the quiet heroism of surviving day by day. And Adrian listened with the same intense focus he brought to everything, his hand never leaving hers. They spent a week on the island, swimming, talking, making plans for the foundation that became more ambitious with each conversation, learning each other's rhythms, their scars, their dreams. On their last night, under stars so bright they looked fake, Adrian finally revealed the thing he'd been holding back. I want you to move into the main house, he said. Not as staff, as my partner, equal in everything. Lena's breath caught. Adrian, that's too fast, I know. But Lena, I don't want to waste time pretending this is casual or temporary. You're it for me. The person I want to build a life with. And I know it's complicated and people will talk and it might be a disaster, but I also know that I've never been more certain of anything in my life. What about the power dynamic, the optics? The foundation will be a separate entity. You'll have your own income, your own authority. The mansion is just a building. We can make it whatever we want it to be. Remodel it, sell it, burn it to the ground, and build something new. I don't care about the building. I care about coming home to you. Lena looked at this man who'd saved her life and given her a future, who'd shown her that strength could be gentle and power could be used for protection instead of control, who'd seen her when she was invisible and valued her when she had nothing to offer but herself. Okay, she said. Yes, let's do it. Adrian's smile was incandescent. Yeah. Lena laughed, giddy with the enormity of it. Let's build something new, together. 1 year later, almost to the day since that terrible Christmas Eve, Lena stood in the mansion's rebuilt conservatory surrounded by people she'd come to love. Patricia, crying happy tears. Dr. Chen, smiling knowingly. Harrison, looking uncomfortable in a suit but present nonetheless. The foundation had launched 3 months ago, already helping hundreds of families escape medical debt. The mansion had been transformed from a fortress into something warmer, more welcoming. And Lena had transformed from invisible to essential, from survivor to creator of her own future. Adrian found her by the windows, looking out at gardens that bloomed despite the winter cold. Hey, he said softly, you okay? Just thinking about last year, about how different everything is. Better different or worse different? Lena turned to him, this man who'd become her partner in every sense of the word. Better, definitely better. Good. Because I have something for you. Adrian pulled a small box from his pocket, and Lena's heart stopped. Before you panic, this isn't what you think. Well, it is, but I'm not asking yet. I'm just showing you what I'm planning to ask in about 6 months, when we've hit our 1-year anniversary of actually being together, because I'm trying to be rational and reasonable about this. Lena laughed through sudden tears. You're planning a proposal 6 months in advance? I'm planning our entire life together. The proposal is just one step. He opened the box, revealing a ring that was simple and perfect and unmistakably meant for her. I wanted you to know that this is where we're headed, that I'm committed, that when I said you were it for me, I meant forever. Adrian, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. He closed the box, pocketed it. So in 6 months, when I ask properly, you'll have had time to think about it, to be sure. Lena grabbed his hand, stopping him. I don't need 6 months. Lena, ask me now. I just said I wanted to be rational and reasonable. Screw rational and reasonable. Lena's smile was radiant. Ask me now, Adrian, because the answer is yes. It's been yes since that night in the library when you told me I challenged you. It's been yes since you carried me out of the snow. It's yes now, and it'll be yes in 6 months, and it'll be yes for the rest of our lives. So ask me. Adrian stared at her and she watched him make the decision. Watched him choose spontaneity over control, emotion over logic. He pulled out the ring box again, opened it, and dropped to one knee right there in the conservatory, with their friends and staff watching. "Lena Carter," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Will you marry me? Will you build this life with me, knowing it'll be messy and complicated and probably chaotic? Will you be my partner, my equal, my home?" "Yes," Lena said, pulling him to his feet. "Yes to all of it." The ring slid onto her finger perfectly. The conservatory erupted in cheers and applause. Patricia was openly sobbing. Harrison actually smiled. And Adrian kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning, like she was the answer to questions he'd stopped asking, like she was everything he'd been looking for without knowing he was searching. When they finally broke apart, Lena rested her forehead against his. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me. For fighting for me. For showing me that surviving the storm doesn't mean you stop living, it means you finally start." Adrian's arms tightened around her. "Thank you for teaching me what it means to actually care about something beyond winning, for making me want to be better, for choosing me despite every reason not to." Around them, the celebration continued. But in that moment, it was just the two of them, two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and built something beautiful from the wreckage. The mansion that had once been Lena's prison had become her home. The man who'd saved her life had become her future. And the girl who'd almost frozen to death on a winter road had survived to build a life beyond anything she'd dared to dream. As snow began to fall outside, gentle and beautiful instead of deadly, Lena looked at Adrian and saw their entire future reflected in his eyes. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, moments when the past tried to drag them back, but they'd face it together. Equal partners, survivors who'd chosen to become more than their trauma. And that, Lena thought as Adrian spun her around the conservatory in an impromptu dance, was more than enough. It was everything. The storm had passed, the war was over, and what remained was something neither of them had expected to find. Love, home, a future worth fighting for. Together they were unstoppable. Together they were finally free.